The hospital corridor stretched long and pale, washed in sterile white light that never quite dimmed, no matter the hour. The steady rhythm of distant heart monitors and the soft squeak of nurses' shoes echoed through the space, creating a quiet soundtrack of urgency and restraint. Keanu Reeves sat near the far end of the waiting area, shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to fold himself into the background. A black cap shadowed his face, and a dark jacket hung loosely from his frame. To anyone not looking closely, he was just another visitor, tired, worried, and waiting. He had chosen this hospital for its anonymity. It wasn't glamorous or new, just functional. The kind of place where people came because they had to, not because they wanted to be seen. Keanu appreciated that. Fame, to him, had always felt loud, and today he needed quiet. He rested his hands together, fingers loosely intertwined, eyes drifting across the floor tiles as thoughts came and went. Time moved strangely, minutes stretched, seconds slipped away unnoticed. Around him life unfolded in fragments. A young mother rocked a restless child, whispering reassurances that sounded more like prayers. An elderly man stared at a wall-mounted television without really watching it, his reflection faintly visible in the dark screen. A nurse passed by with a clipboard, her face focused, her steps quick but controlled. No one paid Keanu any special attention. And for a brief moment, that invisibility felt like relief. He exhaled slowly, letting his shoulders relax. Hospitals had a way of stripping people down to their most human state. Titles didn't matter here. Careers didn't matter. Everyone was equal beneath the fluorescent light, waiting, hoping, fearing. Keanu had played heroes who faced bullets, monsters, and impossible odds. But this place reminded him how small everyone truly was when confronted with real uncertainty. The corridor grew quieter as a set of double doors swung shut down the hall. The sudden hush felt heavier than noise. Keanu adjusted his cap instinctively, a habit formed over years of avoiding attention. He glanced at the digital clock on the wall. The numbers blinked forward with indifferent precision. Somewhere behind those walls, lives were changing in ways no script could predict. Just as he settled deeper into the bench, believing the moment would pass unnoticed, a sharp set of footsteps approached from the emergency wing. The sound cut through the stillness, growing louder, more urgent. Keanu didn't look up right away. He had no reason to. This wasn't his story, at least. Not yet. The air seemed to tighten, as if the corridor itself was holding its breath. In that fragile calm, seconds before everything shifted, Keanu Reeves remained just another quiet figure in a hospital waiting area. That the silence he cherished was about to be broken, and that anonymity was about to slip away in the most unexpected, human way possible. The sharp footsteps stopped abruptly, followed by the swing of emergency room doors snapping open with a hiss of pressured air. A doctor stepped into the corridor. His white coat, slightly wrinkled, sleeves pushed up, eyes scanning the waiting area with urgency rather than care. In one hand, he clutched a clipboard thick with papers. In the other, a pen tapped nervously against the plastic edge. His face carried the unmistakable strain of a long shift, focused, impatient, and running on instinct. Before anyone could react, his voice cut through the silence. Keanu Reeves. The name echoed louder than intended, bouncing off tiled walls and polished floors. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A child's restless whimper faded. Even the distant beeping of machines seemed to pause. As if the hospital itself had been caught off guard. Keanu stiffened. For a split second, he wondered if he had imagined it. Surely not. People didn't shout his name like that, not here. Not now. He kept his head down, hoping it was someone else. Someone with the same name, some coincidence that would quietly resolve itself. Keanu Reeves, we need you right now. The doctor called again, louder this time, frustration creeping into his tone. Every head turned. Keanu slowly looked up, his eyes meeting a wall of stairs. The young mother froze mid. The elderly man leaned forward, squinting. A nurse near the reception desk blinked twice, clearly processing what she'd just heard. The corridor, moments ago anonymous and detached, had become a spotlight. Keanu raised a hand halfway, uncertain, then let it fall. He stood slowly, movements careful, as if sudden motion might make the moment worse. The doctor spotted him immediately and waved sharply, mistaking recognition for confirmation. There you are, the doctor said, already striding closer. We've been calling, why didn't you respond sooner? Keanu opened his mouth to speak, but the words tangled before they could escape. The doctor didn't slow down, launching into a rapid explanation filled with medical terms, test results, and urgency that only deepened the confusion. We need to discuss your scans immediately, the doctor continued. Voice still loud, still public. This isn't something we delay. A fear, not anger, but something far more uncomfortable. Embarrassment. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Keanu finally said. His voice calm but quiet, barely cutting through the noise of attention surrounding him. The doctor frowned, glancing down at the clipboard, then back up at Keanu, irritation flashing briefly before confusion replaced it. The pause was small, but it felt endless. In that moment, the entire corridor hovered between mistake and realization. Keanu stood there, exposed under fluorescent lights, realizing that the privacy he had sought so carefully had vanished in seconds. Not because of cameras or crowds, but because of one shouted name, echoing through a place where everyone was already vulnerable. The pause lingered just long enough to become uncomfortable. The doctor's eyes darted between the clipboard and Keanu's face, brows knitting together as he tried to reconcile the urgency in his mind with the calm confusion standing in front of him. Instead of lowering his voice, he spoke again louder, as if volume alone could fix the situation. Sir, this is serious, the doctor said, tapping the papers. Your test results need immediate discussion. A murmur rolled through the corridor like a soft wave. Keanu felt it before he heard it, the weight of attention pressing in from every direction. He took a small step forward, palms open in a gentle, non-confrontational gesture. I think you may have the wrong person, he said again. Still calm, still polite. I'm not. But the doctor was already rattling off details that made no sense to Keanu and far too much sense to the people listening. Medical terms floated into the air, heavy and alarming. A woman nearby pressed her hand to her mouth. Someone else whispered the word emergency under their breath. Keanu's ears burned. He wasn't embarrassed because people recognized him. He had learned to live with that. This was different. This was personal, exposed, misplaced. The hospital wasn't a stage, and this wasn't a performance he could step out of. A nurse approached cautiously, her expression torn between concern and disbelief. Doctor, she said softly, trying to interrupt. Which Keanu Reeves are you referring to? The doctor waved her off without looking. The one with the abnormal scans, he replied sharply. eyes still fixed on Keanu. "We don't have time." That was when it clicked for everyone at once. A young man near the vending machines let out a quiet laugh, immediately covering his mouth. A nurse at the desk froze, recognition flashing across her face like a struck match. Phones began to shift in pockets not fully raised yet, but close enough to feel threatening. Keanu shifted his weight, rubbing the back of his neck, a habit he couldn't quite break. He offered a small, apologetic smile, not because he was at fault, but because that was how he navigated awkwardness. "I really think there's been a mix-up," he said, a little firmer now. "I'm just here as a visitor." The doctor finally looked down properly at the clipboard. His confident posture cracked. He flipped a page, then another. "Lips." He started, then stopped. Keanu exhaled slowly, the tension easing, but not disappearing. The embarrassment still clung to him, thick and stubborn. He could feel the story forming already, whispered from stranger to stranger. Not a scandal, not a headline. Just a deeply human mistake, unfolding in front of too many witnesses. For the first time since entering the hospital, Keanu wished he could disappear. Not because he was ashamed, but because moments like this reminded him how fragile privacy really was. One voice raised in the wrong place, and even the quietest intentions could unravel. Silence didn't last long. It never did in places filled with people and curiosity. Once the mistake settled into the air, reactions began to ripple outward. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Whispers sparked up in clusters, low and excited, like static before a storm. "Is that really him?" Someone murmured. "I think it is," another replied, craning their neck for a better look. Keanu felt the shift immediately. The energy in the corridor changed from concern to fascination, from private tension to public spectacle. A few people smiled awkwardly, unsure whether they had just witnessed something inappropriate or something unforgettable. Others looked embarrassed on his behalf, eyes darting away, as if giving him space might somehow restore his dignity. A young nurse near the desk clasped her hands together, eyes wide but kind. "Oh my God," she whispered to no one in particular. A patient in a wheelchair chuckled softly, shaking his head as if to say only in a hospital. Somewhere behind Keanu, a phone camera quietly clicked on, then hesitated, then lowered again. Keanu stood still, absorbing it all. He didn't scold anyone. He didn't hide. He simply waited, letting the moment run its course. His face carried a faint, self-aware smile, the kind that acknowledged the awkwardness without feeding it. Inside, though, he felt the familiar tug of discomfort, not anger, not humiliation, just the strange vulnerability of being seen when you didn't ask to be. The doctor cleared his throat, finally finding his voice again. "Everyone, please," he said, attempting to reclaim authority. "There's been a misunderstanding. Let's give some space." A few people complied immediately, returning to their seats, embarrassed by their own curiosity. Others lingered, pretending to check messages or glance at the TV, stealing looks when they thought no one noticed. Fame had a way of bending manners, even in places where respect should come first. Keanu nodded gently toward the people nearby, a silent apology for the disruption. One woman met his eyes and smiled sympathetically. Another mouthed, "I'm sorry," as if the entire situation had somehow been her fault. The corridor slowly began to breathe again. The hum of machines returned to awareness. Shoes squeaked. Life resumed its careful pace. Yet the moment had left a mark on the air, on the people, on Keanu himself. He realized then that embarrassment wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, shared, and deeply human. No headlines. No applause. Just a room full of strangers briefly connected by a mistake. As attention gradually drifted away, Keanu took a small step back toward his seat. The bench felt less invisible now, but it was still a refuge. He sat down slowly, hands resting on his knees, eyes forward. The world hadn't ended. The moment hadn't broken him. It had simply reminded him that even in silence, being human could be unexpectedly public. The doctor stood there for a moment longer than necessary, shoulders tense. Eyes lowered to the clipboard, as if it might offer an escape from what had just happened. Around them, the hospital had mostly returned to its rhythm. But the residue of the moment still lingered, thin and fragile. Keanu noticed it the way people moved a little more carefully now. The way voices stayed softer than before. Finally, the doctor stepped closer, lowering his voice at last. "Mr. Reeves," he said quietly, clearing his throat. "I owe you an apology. That was unprofessional. I should have checked more carefully." Keanu looked up at him, meeting his eyes without judgment. He could see the exhaustion there. The weight of long hours and heavy responsibility. Mistakes didn't always come from carelessness. Sometimes they came from being human in a place that demanded perfection. "It's okay," Keanu replied gently. "These things happen." The simplicity of his response seemed to surprise the doctor more than anger would have. He let out a breath he'd been holding, nodding in gratitude. "Still," the doctor said, "I'm sorry for putting you on the spot." Keanu stood and extended his hand. The gesture was small, but powerful. The doctor shook it, relief washing across his face. Nearby, a nurse watched the exchange and smiled, the tension finally breaking for good. A few people noticed and quietly returned to what they'd been doing. One man gave Keanu a respectful nod as he passed. The young mother whispered something to her child and smiled. The moment was ending, not erased, but softened. Keanu sat back down, pulling his cap a little lower. Not to hide, but to reclaim a sense of calm. He reflected briefly on how strange life could be. In films, moments of embarrassment were scripted, controlled, edited for effect. Real life offered no such mercy. Yet it also offered something better: choice. The choice to respond with grace. The doctor walked away, his pace slower now, more thoughtful. The corridor felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Keanu closed his eyes for a second, listening to the steady hum of the hospital, grounding himself in the ordinary sounds. He realized then that dignity wasn't about avoiding awkward moments. It was about how you carried yourself through them. Fame hadn't taught him that, life had. When he finally stood to leave, no one followed, no one called out his name. He moved through the corridor, as quietly as he had hoped earlier. Not invisible, but at peace. The embarrassment had passed, leaving behind something unexpectedly meaningful: a reminder that kindness, especially in uncomfortable moments, could echo far longer than a raised voice ever could.